From its inception, the Wonder Boy series has gone from a straight-ahead arcade platformer to a slower hybrid of arcade action and light RPG elements to a side-scrolling shooter of sorts, and now we enter full-on action RPG territory with Wonder Boy 3: The Dragon's Trap. Released in September of 1989 for the Sega Master System, it shouldn't be confused with Wonder Boy 3: Monster Lair, which hit arcades 1 year earlier and dropped on the PC Engine and TurboGrafx-16 1 month before it. Because why not make two different games both labeled as the third entry in a series and release them right around the same time? Also, make sure you watch the video I put together on that one. It also made it to the TurboGrafx-16 under the title The Dragon's Curse in 1991, with the PC Engine version being called Adventure Island, which of course is not confusing with the other very similar series called Adventure Island already existing. Not confusing at all. It also arrived on the Game Gear in 1992 under Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap, just removing the 3 from the title for absolutely no reason at all. Once again developed by Westone and published by Sega, The Dragon's Trap is a direct sequel to Wonder Boy and Monsterland. It takes the light RPG elements of Monsterland and makes them the focus, as well as removing the slow, linear progression in favor of a more open exploration-based game. Not only that, but it literally starts at the end of Monsterland, starting you off right before the final battle with the Mecha Dragon. This section served almost as a tutorial section or an interactive story summary, something not seen that often in 1989. Of course, this isn't the exact thing that happened in Monsterland, as in that one you defeat Mecha Dragon and you are the triumphant hero. But in this shortened and remixed scenario, Mecha Dragon curses you, hence the name of the game, and the actual adventure begins. Our little hero now has to set out across Monsterland and not only defeat more dragons, but also recover the Salamander Cross to turn back into their original, not hideous monster self. Though I think our hero makes a pretty cute little lizard, honestly. Now, when I said earlier that this is an action RPG, it is definitely a loose definition of a role-playing game. We're talking about exploration-based progression by acquiring items, money, and new powers. Actually, let's talk about that for a minute. The Wonder Boy series is often talked about as a series that has added RPG elements in its sequels. I mean, I did that not only in the beginning of this video, but also my Wonder Boy and Monsterland video. But there aren't experience points to collect and levels to grind for in Dragon's Trap. This falls into that often debatable area of, are the Legend of Zelda games actually role-playing games? Which similarly doesn't have level progression, and that feeling of growing in strength is generally given by finding new items after defeating a dungeon boss. In fact, the way this game operates, it's much closer to that term that some gamers seem to hate right now, Metroidvania. Even though later on Castlevania games began to add experience points-based level progression. But Dragon's Trap definitely flows more closely to the Castlevania and Metroid games than it does to other games that tend to fall under the action RPG banner. It's a 2D side-scroller. Progression is gated off by needing a new power or item, usually acquired after defeating a boss. And though backtracking is a bit on the lighter side in Dragon's Trap, you definitely do it, and it all stems from a central hub. But action RPG, Metroidvania, it doesn't matter that much in the end. What does matter is that Dragon's Trap is the full transition away from the original Wonder Boy to this more exploration-based progression, backtracking, and world puzzle solving. The game begins proper, now transformed into the Lizard Man, in this little town that you'll be revisiting throughout the game for a multitude of reasons. From this central location, the game branches out in several directions, gated off by a few methods and usually requiring a specific power. They did a wonderful job making this game world seem rather vast in scope, which is good because a few spots you'll be seeing more than once as you come back looking for new treasure. You'll find yourself in such exotic locales as the desert near a pyramid and sphinx, or you'll be living your best life hanging out with the crabs at the beach. Usually I would talk about bosses in a game later on, but this game is very dungeon and then boss centric. You'll have to face off against the Mummy Dragon, Dragon Zombie, Daimo Dragon, Captain Dragon, and even Vampire Dragon. Yeah, they're all ridiculous, but in the best way. After defeating each of these dragons, you'll transform to some new creature and find yourself with a new method of attack or new power to help you explore the next area of the game. You'll go from Lizard Man to Mouse Man, Piranha Man, Lion Man, Hawk Man, and then, spoiler alert, back to your original Wonder Boy self. We'll come back to that shortly. Each boss has some unique abilities and strategies to make sure you don't win, but they mostly have the similar tactic of taking a large majority of the screen and just moving back and forth like crazy in order to slam into you. The Mummy Dragon flies above you and back and forth in straight lines, stopping on occasion to spit some gross green goo at you. The Dragon Zombie will go below the floor and then pops up to slowly walk towards you, and again, spitting some really gross green goo at you. The Captain Dragon just does these little cute fluttery hops and launches this arc of hooks at you. And not shockingly, our Samurai Dragon is about tight footwork and slashing with the sword, but of course has to throw something as well. The Vampire Dragon though is a tough one. 2 heads, a constant fire attack, and lots of flying from left to right, way out of your reach. Now back to that curse and those transformations. Starting off as Lizard Man, you cannot use any weapon, no fancy sword while being a lizard for some reason, but you do have the ability to spit some mad fire. After defeating the Mummy Dragon, you become Mouse Man, the adorable little scamp. I love that they actually make you tiny compared to the other transformations. And you can now use weapons and equip a sword, but you still have a special ability, being able to cling to walls and walk on them. Well, not all walls, just the spotted little floor box that kind of look like cheese. Your next transformation is the Piranha Man, bringing you back to a normal size. Now of course this means you have the option of swimming where you couldn't before, kicking those feet while still valiantly holding his sword. Then you have Lion Man. On his own, this is not a very impressive transformation honestly, it just grants you the ability to swing your sword in a full arc. Seriously. But by now you should have a special sword that allows you to break certain bricks, which now means Lion Man can open up paths below and above you, previously not reachable. Then lastly is Hawkman, which not shockingly gives you the power to fly. Unfortunately, like many other games, one of the most useful powers gets unlocked towards the end of the game and gets completely underutilized. So if you need to go find something you may have missed, it certainly makes that trek a lot more bearable. By the way, you're not stuck with these forms after you unlock them. In fact, on several occasions, you'll need to switch to a different form. You can do this once you unlock the room with the magic pad that can change you to whatever blank man you want when you need to solve a few puzzles or go back off to a gated area. Now, it isn't just these transformations that you need to get in order to level up and take on the next task. There is, of course, magic, items to use, armor, and other weapons. This is unfortunately where the game starts to lose a little focus and probably where most people find issues with it. I think most people who don't end up enjoying Dragon's Trap don't understand how the armor and weapon system works, and that is not their fault. See, when you enter one of these little shops run by that awesome eye patch wearing pig, you may notice that there are items that you simply can't buy, and in fact, you won't even know what they are. Logically, you would think this is gated off until you do something like unlock a new transformation, and you'd be mostly right. See, each transformation has a set base level of stats, like attack and defense, and one of those is something called Charm. This charm stat is similar to many other stats in various role-playing games like speech or persuasion, but hilariously is kind of based on how good your character looks. Seriously. I kind of alluded to it earlier. The TurboGrafx-16 version really tries to drive this home by making sure you're aware of how ugly you are. Pretty rude if you ask me. You can also boost the stat by finding charm stones, these little red gems which are found in chests and sometimes dropped by enemies. So as you gain more charm, you can buy better and better armor and weapons, allowing you to have better attack and defense stats. Basically, everything in this game is oddly tied to how cute you are. This perfy pig is keeping you from defeating all the dragons and turning back to yourself unless you can charm him. Don't get me wrong, this is definitely mentioned in the manual, but of course is light on info and brief. It's just a weird mechanic with a few issues. For one, the base stat is wacky, going from 0 to 40, 50, and then back to 20. Your base stat is also rarely good enough to give you the armor you actually need, and armor itself will also boost charm. This basically means you need to be your best looking self, have collected enough charm stones, and have some shiny armor already to really get the good stuff. Man, this pig is a tough negotiator. Every game like this has some sort of wart in my opinion, so this doesn't make Dragon's Trap unique, but it's worth bringing up. But after all that preamble, what is really important is how the game actually plays. Like I said, exploration and backtracking is your main focus while playing Dragon's Trap, and you have a bunch of obstacles in your way while doing that. Generally, they aren't really all that aggressive, just walking around in your way or randomly firing things in your general direction. Of course, there are enemies that will try to take you on directly, and those are the ones to be the most concerned about. But honestly, the challenge in Dragon's Trap is mostly brought about by how weak you really are at any given point. This is why I spend so much time talking about charm points and armor. Because if you didn't know that's what's going on and you didn't pay attention, you're probably just going to have a bad time. Enemies take decent chunks of your life away at base stats and with base armor, and like any game like this, you don't have a lot of life without finding all the right upgrades. On top of that, Dragon's Trap has one of the most annoying mechanics of all time, the damage juggle. You don't just get hit and then have a brief moment of invincibility frames. Your character gets tossed around like a beach ball every time. This makes it very easy for you to get trapped in a corner or to be juggled between enemies, completely helpless, as you can't do anything in this state except make this adorable face of pure horror. This can be especially annoying when fighting bosses because they take up so much space, so they can literally just push you around the room stuck in a constant state of shock. Your attacks can also take a hell of a long time to get used to, and by the time you do, they change it up. As Lizard Man, you start with the flame attack, and it's honestly the best attack on the weakest character, since it has range and literally no one else does. Mouse Man is tiny, so be ready for some really close combat, and Lion Man has that full sweeping attack, so you better watch your timing. Piranha Man and Hawkman just have that usual stab, with Hawkman only having any trouble due to his little extra bird hops, but boy is that adorable. You do have magic in the event that your tiny sword jabs just aren't cutting it. This isn't like the usual magic when you have a meter and just unlocked abilities. You'll need to find these little icons in chests or from fighting enemies to use magic. They're all pretty handy, but I find the tornado to be the most useful since it runs across the ground and can be thrown in pits. Now of course, we need to take a minute to take in the sights and sounds of Dragon's Trap. Sega Master System games tend to get dunked on a lot, but I find this to be a great looking and sounding game. That soundtrack is just so good. Shinichi Sakamoto is once again the composer for the Dragon's Trap, and it is easily one of my favorite video game soundtracks of all time. There isn't anything mind-blowing here, but the compositions are just so catchy and enjoyable. I could almost listen to the track Sidecrawler's Dance on repeat for eternity. This is also one of the situations that despite everyone just always gushing about how awesome the FM sound chip is in the Master System, I really enjoy the regular music for Dragon's Trap way better. There's just something missing in the FM version. Have a listen for yourself and decide. Visually, the Dragon's Trap is wonderful. Sure, they leave something to be desired with the plain color skies and backgrounds, but the character designs are great with these nice, big, detailed sprites. Especially the boss designs, which are a little static, but they still have a nice visual presentation. I'm sure that's why the room is mostly black. There isn't any slowdown or terrible flicker either. Sure, this isn't the most breathtaking visuals of the era, but it's really impressive for a game that came out in 1989. I should also point out that the wonderful visuals of the 1991 PCE TG16 release. There are some small changes made this release and the Game Gear version as well, but not really enough to make a fuss over. But if you want the best looking classic version of Dragon's Trap, this is probably the one to go for. Now I did say best looking classic version for a reason, as this is a good time to bring up the 2017 remake from LizardCube that came out on all the systems and is easily one of my favorite retro revival games to ever be released. They did just a wonderful job with this game both visually and by adding some great quality of life improvements. You can even switch to the classic visuals, granted with a new shiny coat of paint on them. If you can only play one version of the Dragon's Trap, this is probably the one to go with. It has some wonderfully rearranged music and even removed the charm stone problems. Even if you're a die-hard Dragon's Trap fan, if you've never played this version, you really should. So Wonder Boy 3 The Dragon's Trap is really one of my favorite games of all time, and it's simply just a fantastic game, warts and all. It has some issues that haven't aged as well as others, but it's never a bad time. Music is fantastic, the visuals are charming, and the gameplay is challenging at times, but never not engaging or just plain frustrating. If you've never gotten to the game or just never tried it, I suggest taking some of what I've talked about in this video, grabbing a download of the manual if you've never read it, and giving it another try. Once you're hooked, I have a feeling that's it, and you'll likely want to replay it numerous times. Well, that's all for me on this episode of RetroActive. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Dragon's Trap, and if you end up giving it a try for the first time or for another time, give me a shout out on social media and let me know how it goes. Please like, share, subscribe if you haven't yet, and as always, I'll see you next time.